Out of your league, everybody. The show goes on. Hi, Kyle Amor.
How are we doing?
Very good. Look at you. We finally got you here. I've been calling for this for years and years and years. I've finally got rid of Wilkin. We've got rid of Flanagan. And we've got Amor.
Thank you very much. No, pleasure to be back here again.
And so while I was away, you did one with Mark. How did that go? How was the chemistry?
No, it was good. It was good. Flash obviously was a little bit nervous about taking the lead and filling in your role, but I thought you did.
Really,
you
should have taken the lead, shouldn't you? And Flash should have just been.
No, not at all.
Because he looks great, doesn't he? But
he's always looked incredible, Flash.
But there's not a lot in there when the mouth open. Did he go back to that sort of 2014 camaraderie in the dressing room at Saints when you played halfback and won the grand final?
Well, yeah, he mentioned that. So yeah, he didn't let that one go. But no, look, obviously we had Lachlan Cooten.
And you made him cry.
A great guest. So
it's like, this isn't Victoria, Derbyshire. You're not supposed to make the guests cry.
No, look, he was incredibly brave and honest and opened up Will. And
he has got an amazing story, isn't he? It was a good episode, really good episode.
No, thanks.
And also, we went from 4.8 stars to 4.9 stars in that particular week. So whether Amor's had something to do with that.
I don't think that was it, Will. But no, look, delighted to be back on and looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Hi, Brian Brierley.
Nice to meet you.
Look at this. Just straight in with the intros. That's what we should go for. Not just a Salford fullback, but also a women's football agent, Carl. Did you know that?
I knew you were doing some footballing agency. I didn't know it was specific to the women's game, but obviously a fantastic player in his right, and obviously a busy man with other talents off the field too.
Yeah, this is what I love about these podcasts, because we're going to ask all sorts of questions which we don't know the answers to, and actually I think what's going to be really interesting, Ryan, out of this is just from our little chat that we had before, is the agent side of things in general, like in not just only in rugby league, and I want Kyle's views on that as well. But you, since we've last seen you, had a great time at Wembley, Kyle. How good was that?
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Talk about the women's game. Well,
you're like the Claire Balding of rugby league now. I said to you last week. There isn't a show or a station that you're not on. You're like, you get more places than Wilkin.
Yeah, no, I'm just a big fan of the game, and I've been able to sort of work on these, on all parts of the sport. Sorry, the women, the wheelchair, the men's. Look, obviously the men's is the game that we grow up and watching, and that's where my passion is. But obviously with the wheelchair and the women's side of it now, I've learned to get to know some of these players, their backstories, which some of the guys and girls have got fantastic stories there, and then ultimately get to watch them play the sport that we all love. And I think it's only fantastic that those two sports have taken off over the last couple of years.
How big was that for your old teammate Matty Smith? We had him on the week before he went down to Wembley, the women's.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Obviously Matty's a good friend of mine, and he actually loves and deeply cares about the game. So anybody who gets to be successful, you should only really, especially when they put the work in, you should only applaud them and champion them for it. So, well done, Matty, on his debut season lifting that cup.
Let's get stuck into Ryan. Well, the nickname Kess, that's not to do with this film in the 60s about the bird, is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
Go on, tell us how that came up.
Because when I first went to Lee, Paul Rowley's mentioned Kes, and again, I didn't have a clue about what it was.
You never. It's a classic. It's a classic
but
film.
There's a misconception, because the reason he calls me Kes because he thinks I look like Billy Casper,
right?
After the skinny lad who's like hanging off the goalpost. So I should be called Billy, really, but he just called me Kes just because of the film. So
sad film. The bird dies at the end, doesn't it? If you haven't seen it,
I've
never seen Kes.
I've not seen it.
It's a film in the 60s about set in South Yorkshire.
Yeah, I've heard all about it. There's a PE teacher or something in there as well, and I've heard all about it. But there's loads of top films that I haven't seen. Never seen a James Bond.
What?
I know.
You've not seen one James Bond film?
Not seen one James Bond film.
That's a disgrace. Star
Wars? No, I have seen one.
Yeah.
That's the one with, was it Phantom of the something?
Not sure. Well, we've had Star Wars on this. on this.
Yeah, but no, there's loads. Rocky, not even seen a Rocky.
What is going on?
I know.
That's huge.
I know.
You've retired.
That's a big one,
the kid from.
This is the time to do it all.
There's nothing really, not doing much in Whitehaven, and our nearest cinema was about 10 miles away. So, yeah.
So you two, I mean, you've come up against each other a few times, I imagine, over the years.
Yeah.
Been flattened by Amor a few times, Ryan.
Yeah, he's a grub.
Go on, as a player, Ryan, talk to me, Kyle.
Oh, look, he knows how to score a try. He's one of those players that's very, very instinctive, reads and understands the game incredibly well. You've only got to look at the amounts of tries that he's scored in his career across the Championship and in Super League as well. And when you've got an instinctive player in your side, you've always got a chance. And, me and Ryan over the last couple of months have worked together on different little bits of media and kind of got to understand a little bit around what he's like. He's obviously a deep thinker of the game, cares and wants to improve wherever he's at. So, but again, I think his try scoring record speaks for itself.
This is the future of rugby league punditry right in front of us now, isn't it? Forget John Wilkin. We don't like to say John's name too much. Former teammate of yours at Toronto, which we're going to get talking about later. But this is it. This is it right here, right?
Oh, well, I think there's plenty of people that's coming through in there. That again just want to just want to get out there and get to work in a different part of the field of the sport that we all love.
Yeah. Talk to me about your story, Ryan. So you're born in Preston boy, Lancashire boy. What was sort of life for a young Ryan Brierley like?
Yeah, steady. There's no nothing exciting about, nothing a sob story around it. I had obviously a normal upbringing. I moved to Bolton when I was kind of 2-3 year old. Also played my local amateur team, West Orton Lions, which is, especially in Bolton, probably not renowned for rugby league. So obviously at school and stuff was never really part of any school rugby team. It was always kind of football. So I've kind of grew up watching football, so massive Preston North End fan.
Years and years of pain.
Yeah, years. Like I am. But obviously most of my family obviously was massive Preston football fans, but obviously my dad's side was all rugby league. Like he loved Salford. So I've always watched Salford growing up as a young boy. So as he kind of grew older, took me to the games. Also, all my dad's side is mainly Salford rugby league fans. So kind of grew my love for the game through them.
What was your first memory? Because you used to go to the Willows, right?
Yeah, and that was my be all and end all. Every weekend going to the Willows. There was actually a funny story when I was at school, and when you on a Monday morning when the teacher says, "What have you done at the weekend?" It was always on a Friday. Went to watch rugby at Salford, and there was a bit worried that I never did anything else, and I was always worried about any other interest, and I didn't really have any other interests other than play rugby. And also Kyle said the same. When you have a passion and dream to be a professional rugby league player, that's all I ever wanted, and that wasn't from out of arrogance thinking I deserved to be. I just thought you could choose to be. I didn't know you had to be any good. I just thought you could just, when it says, "Oh, what do you want to do when you're older?" or "What do you want to be?" It was a rugby player, because I just thought you could just choose to be one. I didn't know you had to be selected or picked or contracted. You don't know any of that when you're a young kid. You're just playing in the car park, aren't you? So I think that's where my desperation and desire probably came from in terms of rugby league, that I never wanted a plan B. When they so even my mum and dad, well, what are you going to do if you don't make it? What's going to be a plan B? I never had one, because I just thought that was what I was going to do.
Was it about you, or do you think when you think back it was about making your dad proud because of his sort of passion for Salford and rugby league?
Purely me. My dad loved rugby, but never pressured me, never forced me to play. I had a couple of wobbles when I was 11, 12 about not playing the game, and never once forced me, never once was upset with me. Just always supported me, which is what I wanted. Also from my mum and dad. Took me everywhere, travelled everywhere in the country to watch me play, but and even now, like, that's never left. The family are really supportive of me, so definitely wasn't pushed or pressured. It was just I wanted to be a professional rugby league player. Watching Salford, and my heroes growing up, it was Steve Blakely, Gavin Clinch, people like that. Even Luke Robinson, obviously back end of his time, back end of his career. So that was my biggest inspiration. Is I wanted to play for Salford. That was my biggest dream. And even though people will kind of grow up and wanted to win things and win trophies, mine was just play for Salford. Luckily, kind of has happened now.
When was that realisation then that you actually had the talent to be able to do that? Because it's all well and good saying, "Oh, I thought I could just pick and choose," and you didn't play a lot. You've said a lot of rugby league as a kid. We've had so many people on this podcast who, you know, I mean, you, Carl, you played a lot, right? And I know you went from a sort of, well, what tell us for those who don't know your background as a kid in terms of.
Oh well, actually, I didn't. As a young kid, I didn't play
From because of the area you were from.
Yeah,
right?
well, look, obviously there was a lot of rugby league there, loads of amateur clubs, a lot of my mates played. But I was about I think I played a year at under 9s, a year at under 11s, and then I left it up until I got my job in a factory. And then it was one of my oldest brother's mates was like, why don't you come and play? And I started playing second team rugby and on a Friday night, and then quickly that started doing well, and then they wanted me in the first team on the Saturday, and then we had a national under 18s league on the Sunday. So I very quickly became, from not playing that much at all, into for about the next 5 years until I got signed professionally by Whitehaven, was playing every Friday, Saturday, Sunday across sort of 3 different teams, but within my one club. So yeah, that's how I did it. But I loved it that way though, Will, because I got to play with men, from a 16, 17-year-old and everything that came with it. The Saturday club, the Sunday club that we used to have after the game, and that was, that's how my sort of story and introduction got into it. But for me, I never, and I've mentioned this before, I never for once thought that I'd get to anywhere near, what I was able to achieve in the game. So for me, it was literally just riding the wave all the time.
But did you think, Ryan, that you were playing catch up then because you hadn't played as much rugby as some of the kids you were knocking about with later, or not?
I think in general I have been a late developer in my game. When all my friends, and I'll say at 16, there's normally like a scholarship or you sign to an under 18s team or something like that. I never got picked, so all my friends got selected at 16 to your Wigan Saints, and I still believe now I probably wanted to be a rugby player more than any of them players who got picked. But I didn't. I just wasn't good enough, so I never got picked when I was 16. So I went going to college and just think it wasn't going to happen. And I think as I was playing for the college at Lee, I sent a video, a DVD video to every Super League club for a trial, and there was the only team who got back to me was Castleford Tigers. My dad weren't so happy because he had to travel an hour.
So it was like a DVD with a covering letter.
That's quite unique.
I've never heard.
Yeah, it was with a covering. Yeah, with a covering. That's what it was.
Go on, what sort of things did it say?
Also, I'd explain on the covering letter. I'd say my position, where I've played, my like a CV, and because again, I didn't know that you had to be selected. I thought you could just apply to be one. Because I didn't understand it then. I didn't understand the process around it. So I'm just putting I want to be a professional rugby league player. I want to do this. I want to do that. They come back to me and said, well, yeah, come down on like a Tuesday night at Castleford High School, and kind of kicked on from there. And also went through the academy system. But weirdly, I still think when you talked about when did you realise you was good enough, or I suppose that's a really awkward question for me to answer, because I've still struggled with that throughout my career, whether I am or not. I think over the last probably 2 years, 3 years at a push, I've become really comfortable with myself as a rugby league player, because I feel like I have failed at times. When I've had previous stints in Super League, I've not been good enough. Didn't think I was ever going to make it. So even now, when you say, when did you realise you were good enough? I don't know if I really am. That's how I think.
Just on that though, Ryan, I truly believe that there's an awful lot of players in Super League who almost suffer from that imposter syndrome. I did myself, that where you perhaps, because the sport's played by 17 blokes, you're essentially a cog in the wheel, right? So I honestly believe that there'll be a number out there who fully believe in themselves and who back themselves. But I think for a lot of players as well, and again, I'm only talking from my own experience, is that they do tend to struggle with that self-belief. You've got these young men who are being judged every single day by coaches, by the players, by the playing group, by fans. It's very easy to then fall into, if I have a bad run, am I actually good enough? Do I deserve to be here? And so it does surprise me in one sense, because when you see Ryan play the game, he looks like he's just enjoying it all the time. Anyone who's scoring as many tries as what he does, surely he's enjoying it. Wish I could only dream of a fraction of what he's done in terms of try scoring. But I just think that what he said there is probably a bit more common than maybe what people might think.
It's interesting that because, again, you get different types of characters who at a very young age just think, I'm just going to do this, I'm going to show everyone, show the world what I'm made of and so on. But did you struggle with that confidence then? So that day that you turn up to CAS and you've sent out this covering letter and you're trying to sort of almost prove people wrong before you started, right?
Yeah, paranoia is massive. I think in rugby league, especially, I've experienced that paranoia, what people think of you, how people judge you. Are you good enough? Are you not? And that doesn't stop. On a Monday morning when you're in your video review, you're about to get judged again, and the anxiety through the weekend, knowing that you're going to come up in video. You think about in the game, you make a mistake in the game. All you can think about is video on the Monday morning, and that's the judgmental side of the game. I have got better with over the years and grown up heavily.
I do think, though, you do get better with that as you get older anyways, in general, don't you? You do start to, I wouldn't say care less, but you start to stop thinking about what other people as such think about you. But we all know by that point, it's nearly time for you to quit the game and move on because you get to a certain age where, you know, I remember last couple of seasons, exactly what you're saying. You're thinking about the video, but I think by then you already know what you've done wrong, don't you? And you're comfortable by saying, look, I've got that wrong. You know what I mean? You're not looking to shirk it or look to finger point anywhere else. You can just sort of understand it, can't you?
And I think what's probably helped me is when you come to your next game, you realise no one cares about last game, do they? Like you just move on so quickly. I have obviously try out with a couple of our young lads at Salford with it that they're in pieces after video for days.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do know that Warrington over there, they don't care about you've played bad. Saints don't care about you've dropped the ball. They don't. No one's bothered. So the situation is always way bigger in your own head than anyone else's.
So was it rejection for you at the Jungle at that stage, at CAS, before it all came good and you found your feet at Lee? How did that transition work?
Yeah, I was kind of put on dual reg at Lee, and it worked because Lee was obviously more local and obviously getting a chance to play again. So again, probably a bit of a late development from what Kyle said about playing against men and really exposing myself to that sort of environment, which was scary for me because I'm going to a change room with Stuart Littler and Tommy Goulding, people like that who were really senior pros who, and bear in mind, I'd watched Stuart Littler as a fan, obviously growing up at Salford, and
they were bonkers.
There's probably not many more ruthless change rooms to go into. Rob Parker was part of that as well, so that was probably a good thing for me. It was probably the deep end and just get on with it. And I think,
but that's sink or swim, right? That's
100%. Yeah. And what I will say is, I probably needed that in terms of the protection element. Like, I was the young kid, and if anyone touched me on a rugby league field, they'd be livid. They'd jump straight in for me. Ricky Bybee, God bless him. For me, he was a hero for me because anyone went anywhere near me, he'd fire up and not anyone touch me.
But did you have to earn that protection? Not
initially, no. I think because I wasn't really in the team consistently, so I'd be like in off the bench or... and I was part of a good team, so I would maybe score tries. So I probably gained my respect that way, but not to the depths of where you have to earn your respect now is week in, week out, sort of actions, that sort of stuff. But in that dressing room, I felt comfortable after a while because they protected me, which is what I needed probably. Because of that rejection, having actually someone who go, no, we'll actually accept you and we'll look after you. And not travelling on M62 every night for an hour, and was quite nice.
Because I'm just thinking your personality as well. You're not a drinker. You don't necessarily, I imagine, get involved too much in the social scene of it or whatever. And a young boy on there, on the scene at the beginning. Sometimes you want to come in, you want to just do everything to impress and be part of it, right? But would you say you're a bit of an introvert compared to some of the other?
Yeah, and again, but in a rugby league environment, when someone says they don't drink, you probably think it's a little bit weird, don't they?
Well, this is what we talked about with Lachlan Coote. I do believe that mindset is changing, because of social media. The fact that the game's got more athletic. They don't want to be, these young players don't want to be seen or can't be seen being too messy, can they? For obvious reasons. And I do think that there'll be a certain group of that are still in the game that would maybe frown upon it. But as we spoke about with Lachlan Coote there, you know, I think for many that everybody's kind of just doing what they want to do now within the game, and they'd rather value success and memories in terms of when is the right time to have it, and when, you know, that kind of changing room he's talking about. I was in a similar position in 2010 with Whitehaven, my hometown club, and you know, the game at that level is still, it's just as physical as Super League. It's maybe not the, you know, where it falls short is their decision to make the best decisions under fatigue at speed. That's where the game differentiates. But there's some tough, what I call proper men in that division. You know, the big roads, they come, they lift weights, they want to compete, they want everything about it. But there's just, as we know, with every level comes a new level, you know. So, but they are, and back around that time, they were still very much like, it was dead funny to be around. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say it was wrong. I loved every minute of it. But it was very, very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. You talk about the numbers and the tries that you scored, and I think you put yourself down a little bit there, Ryan, because 133 tries in 125 games for Lee. It's ridiculous numbers. At that stage, did you almost feel kind of unbeatable? Did you feel like the sky was your limit, that was your stepping stone to bigger and better things already?
No, I think that the tries came as being part of obviously a good team for one. And looking back now, I had probably a selfish attitude that if I scored a try, I've done my job. Like I've done my bit. And looking back, a lot of them tries were off the bench because consistently for 80 minutes I would have flaws in my game, but I was quick, so I'd probably score a try. And looking back, it was probably the most selfish 5 years of my career, because all I thought about was, well, someone else make a break and I'll just support it, and I'm quick enough to get there and I'll score.
You just felt that was your job, just to finish.
That was my only job. And even defensively, that pack game was non-existent for me. That even, like, in terms of video and preview, I never watched anything where I would have to defend. Like that. So, and I'd always, again, a selfish mentality. I'd be pushing people inside me, going, "You defend. I'll just score a try." And looking back now, like, it's such a selfish mindset that my players would have had to deal with for me. And it didn't hold me in good stead in the back end of my career, because when you actually start learning to be a good teammate and be a good professional, I just thought, well, Martin Ridyard was great for me as a halfback. He used to take all the control, do all the kicking, do all the dirty stuff. And he'd set someone up or put someone through a hole, and I'd just back up the middle and score. Yeah. And that was just my way of probably a bit the imposter syndrome again, that if I could put myself over the try line and celebrate, well, I'm now a professional rugby league player because I'm scoring a try and I'm celebrating in front of fans. That makes me a professional rugby league player.
But imposters don't have those sorts of numbers, do they, Kyle? I mean, that's the thing. It's almost like in football, you'd have, as a Liverpool fan, you'd have certain people with certain skills. But do you then, as a coach, want someone who's got everything, the all-round package? If you've got a natural finisher like that, do you not just let him do what he does naturally?
Well, I think that's what you do, don't you? You know, no one's ever going to complain if a striker's scoring goals for you, are they? You know,
it's when the numbers stop, right? Where the questions come.
I mean, but look, I just think that. It's interesting listening to what you're saying there, and you're saying about your imposter syndrome and you had a selfish mindset. But I honestly think as well that some of the best players, even across any sport, are of a selfish mindset. You know, they actually believe that everybody is there to watch them. They believe that their job is to be the one that everybody's talking about. And I'm not saying that I'm certainly not saying that. But I do believe that if you score as many tries as what you do, you've got to. It must have been hard to then not actually truly deep down believing in what you were doing. So, at what point was that the mind shift where you actually thought that, you know, not just scoring the try? There must have been a stage within your career where you felt, right, I am on the way up. You know, whether that was when you left Lee or when you joined Salford. There must have been a point where you felt that I am a Super League player.
Well, I was, in terms of realising I was a Super League player, that honestly has only been recently, probably the last 2 years. Because when I left Lee, I also went to Huddersfield for a transfer fee. And transfer fees are quite rare, aren't they, in rugby league? And I was a bit like, transfer fee for me. So, bit of ego in there. I think, well, someone's actually paying for me. Did I believe I was worth that fee? Definitely not. Did I think my career was just going to take up? Yeah, 100%. And then when I realised how difficult Super League was, I panicked. I had nerves, anxiety, and then I started getting dropped. And I've never had that before. I'd never had that in terms of being dropped from a team. So I'd been rejected in terms of not getting selected for a contract or things like that, but I'd never been flying and thinking I was fine. Cause I'd scored for Huddersfield.
You scored a hat-trick, didn't you?
Yeah.
Against Wigan.
And
I always remember.
Yeah, I did.
I remember, and look, I'll openly say it now. I remember an article came out the next day, and it said about, you'd said something like, "I scored this hat trick, and I expected." I don't know what it was. You might have to remind me that you expected something to happen and nothing happened.
Yeah, I expected to be like a superstar.
It was something along them lines. And look, I'll be honest, we were sat around having a meal, and we were like, "What's this lad saying this for?" Do you think ego has been in your way?
It's a bit of a juxtaposition, though, the ego and the imposter syndrome. They're not two things which go together.
The expectancy of... So against Wigan, at the DW, which is, for me, one of the best stadiums to play in rugby. Mm-hmm. So, and bear in mind, I'd been rocking around the Championship for years. I'd not played... So a game against Wigan now is, for me, it happens every year, whereas that didn't happen for me. So that was like a massive game for me. Yeah. And I scored a hat. It was on Sky as well. So hat trick against Wigan on Sky. And I got interviewed after the game, and I'm thinking, I'd never had any of this. I'd never been the star of the show. We're talking Super League here. Championship was fine, play against your Barrows and Dewsbury, no disrespect. I'm scoring tries against them, but to go against Wigan and score a hat trick, and weirdly, because Huddersfield, I drove myself to the game. So I walked out the stadium, no one there. Well, I walked all the way around where the players park, right at the back. So I'd walk right around on my own. I'm going, this is bizarre. I feel like I've just scored a hat trick at Wigan, and no one cares. I felt like no one cared about it, which I really struggle with. That. I remember, obviously, you go home and you can't sleep after games, can you? And I'm going, no one had spoke to me. I'd literally gone from the interview, showered, walked to my car, got in my car, drove home 10 minutes away, and got into bed, and I felt like no one cared, and it was really bizarre to handle.
Can I do what did you expect to happen then?
Because I'd got a hat trick at Wigan, I thought like my world would change. I thought because I'd waited for so long, so because I'd been rejected, and so I'd waited for that opportunity. Because I was probably 24. Which is quite late, isn't it? In terms of
definitely, yeah. The chance is almost gone by around that age.
So I'd kind of, as I said before, I was a late developer in terms of my game and stuff, and it was pretty much right. We've got Catalan next week, and weirdly from that game, we played Catalan the week after. I'd scored again. The week after, I got dropped for the Magic Weekend.
Who was the coach around that time?
Paul Anderson. And he spoke to me about, he said, your numbers weren't good enough. I'm going, just got to try. What do you mean? That isn't. That's what I thought. I just got to try. So why is that not? So in terms of carries, meters, GPS, I'd never heard of any of this. Like yardage carries. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like bear in mind, it was my second game as a fullback. I'd played all my career as a halfback. It was my second game as a fullback, and I was just like, there's new world to me. And thinking now, playing fullback now, we're talking nearly 10 years ago, in terms of what a fullback now does. I didn't have a clue.
It's certainly a position, Will, that's probably changed the most within the last 6-7 years for sure. You know, what they're expected to do. They're all-round players, got to be, the best fullbacks in the game. They're like gold. They're the ones that you would imagine that earn the... Well, Ryan will be able to tell you, being the agent and a fullback himself, that earn the big money now, but they've certainly changed. So I understand there, but for me, that's where a coach needs to coach.
Yeah,
you can't just go out the team. Like, surely, as a young lad, he's got to understand his players and understand that you know. I mean, I never worked with Paul Anderson, but I would have thought surely an arm round you and say, listen, I need you to do this and this next week without no warning, and then just say you're out after scoring 4 tries in 2 games seems a bit...
That was what
seems a bit bizarre, really.
I struggle with it because
was that a pivotal moment in terms of you perhaps losing a bit of passion for the game and then thinking that you weren't getting what you deserved?
I hated the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was... Because I'd become this, in my own head, the superstar at Lee, into then going to Huddersfield and becoming irrelevant and a nobody. I'm thinking I've failed. I'm now... It's mad, isn't it, when you get dropped? You think the world ended, don't you? Like that's how I felt. I felt like the world had ended. So I got dropped after scoring a try at Catalan, after scoring a hat-trick the week before at Wigan, and I was thinking, well, I've now been dropped, so that means I'm not a rugby player anymore. I'm not a professional. I can't tell my mates I'm a professional rugby league player because I've been dropped now, and you get embarrassed. Why are you not playing? Oh, yeah, I've been rested, or I've got a tight hammy, or I got embarrassed by telling my friends that I wasn't playing anymore, and people who
what did your teammates say? Because I mean, it seems like, again, from the outside, none of us would have noticed that fragility, right? You just think you're big old brutes and you carry on or whatever, but like you obviously weren't in a great place at that time.
Yeah, I was really struggling, if I'm honest. Just couldn't get to grips with Super League, couldn't get to grips with the environment, and I'd gone from an environment at Lee where we won the league every year, and everything was happy, and it was a chilled environment, everyone loved each other, to Huddersfield, where I was in a relegation battle, and it was one of the most torturous environments that I could ever been in. People didn't speak to each other, people didn't look at each other, staff would avoid each other, staff would avoid players, and I'm just a young kid talking about the what did you expect to happen? This is my Super League dream, this, and it was the worst 12 months of my career and my life. I just didn't. I hated it. There's a couple of good lads who I spent a lot of time with, Leroy Cudd, George, Jermaine McGilvery, who were great with me. But I just couldn't figure out that I'd built Super League up to be this massive thing and the be-all and end-all, and realised it was quite bad. Like, my experience of it at that time was really poor, and I think, why have I built this up to be so big? And it's actually nothing like it. It's, and again, is that my fault for building it up to be something huge when young kids at your Saints, Wigan now, they've been playing Super League since they were 17, 18. They've not had that build-up where I had 6-7 years of building this Super League dream to be the pinnacle, and realise when you rock out at Huddersfield on a Friday night and there's 2,000 or 3,000 there, it's not this big thing what I thought it was going to be.
Did you want to quit? Did you want to give it up at that stage?
Yeah, well, the reason I went to Toronto wasn't because I wanted to be at Toronto. I wanted to get out of Super League, which was the most volatile decision, what was going through my head. Looking back now, I can't remember what I was thinking at the time.
If you could go back to that point, would you have stayed at Huddersfield?
No,
given what we're about to talk about with what happened in Canada / Rochdale.
No, just because I hated it. I hated rugby. And I wanted to run away from the problem. So the fact it was Toronto was me running away to a different country to get away from me believing people was laughing at me because I'd not made it in Super League, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So rather than solving the problem, rather than knuckling down and working hard to be a better professional, be a better teammate, to fight my way into the team, I took the easy option and went to a coach who believed in me, who I love to bits. I think he gets the best out of me.
Paul Rowley. Yeah.
Paul Rowley. I needed that love. I needed that love back, and he saved me from a tough period in my career there.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Again, I'm going to go back to when I was last here with Lachlan Coote, and he spoke about how a coach can make or break you. You know, we all know that really, but you know, you've got different coaches. You've still got the same personality, the same player, but a coach can make you either feel 100 foot tall or make you want to walk away from a sport that you love, isn't it? I think it's so important that you get that right, really. And you know, obviously, you in Toronto, you worked under Rolls, great for you. Brian Mack as well. What was Brian Mack like for you?
Well, Go on. I only got a 5-minute glimpse into that. But like, I mean, the great thing that you're here now, you're not going to hold back, right?
No.
And I don't think you should, because it's, obviously we've had Brian Mack on the podcast before and heard his personal story, and he's had his own demons and things going on back in the past. But I mean, essentially, and you answer Carl's question, but it kind of went from bad to worse from Huddersfield to Toronto, right? That's really why you went into the world of agency and so on. And at first, Paul Rowley's there, it's all ticking along nicely. Then what happened?
Yeah, obviously the first 2 years of Toronto was unbelievable. And obviously, despite what I'll go into now, if you'd have asked me what's the best experience in rugby league, I'd still say this Toronto experience was unbelievable. And that's probably another story for another day. But if they'd have got that right, I just think it would have changed rugby league for the good. I just think it was a very special project they had there, and if they would have got it right, that'd have been incredible. But so the first 2 years was great. Also, then Paul decided to leave, and Brian McDermott came in. And it's funny because I don't want to make this a hostile chat, because I've seen Brian since, and we've got on, and it's probably a laugh now that we talk about it. But he came in, and I was actually excited by the appointment, because we had discussions about me going to Leeds a couple of years prior, before I went to Huddersfield. So the choice chose Huddersfield, because I think I'd have had to wait another year to sign for Leeds, whereas Huddersfield was like immediately. So I wanted, again, the Super League dream, I wanted it to happen then. So I was quite excited by the appointment, thinking, and the style they play, I always base my game on Danny Maguire, and obviously from what he coached Danny Maguire, I feel like would have been perfect for me. The style he would have played would have suited me down to the ground, and I still believe it would. Obviously when he came in, he didn't speak to me for a couple of weeks.
Already, that's the coach didn't speak to his star fullback for a couple of weeks.
I'd been told it was weird anyway, so I never took it personally. And he'd make little jokes in video like, "You're playing back row for me," and in front of everyone. So I thought that was like, I'm in the clique. You know what I mean? I thought I'm all right, but would never speak to me personally. And I was just a bit rattled by it, because again, for someone, Paul Rowley would say good morning every morning, chat and be great. And I was after training one day, I was walking to my car, and he said, "Can I chat with you?" Literally by the side of the car park at Hotwood Hall College, and he just said, "I just want to have a quick chat with you." I said, "Yeah, all good." He went, "Just so you know, you'll never play for me, ever." I was like, right. So I was shocked at this point. I'm like, why? He went, no reason. Just, you'll never play for me. I was like, right, well, so I went to protective mode of, I've got 2 years left on my contract. I've kind of seen how these things play out. And I'm going, well, just so you know, Mac, I'm going to come in and train professional. I'm a good kid. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm not an idiot. I'm not a disruptor. You can ask anyone in there about how I am as a person, and then I won't have one person say a bad word about me. I get on with everyone. He went, yeah. He went, you could go out on loan and win Man of Steel, but you'd never play for me.
It's quite a threatening meeting in a car park.
Yeah, and looking back, there was a couple of interesting things what he did. He's a big man anyway.
Yeah.
But he stood on the curb and made me stand on the road, so he was even bigger. So looking back now, and it was quite strategic what he did. But of course, I was rattled. I was intimidated. Yeah, definitely.
Did you think at the time that was a test? That actually you might play for him, but he wanted to see something else? Or was it just like you thought this is literally door closed?
Yeah, I didn't think anything of, just the fact that he just doesn't like me. I'm done.
I had one running with Brian Mack.
In a car park?
No, it was in his office in Leeds.
Yeah.
So at the time, they hadn't set the season off too well. I think it was 2011. I'd been on loan at Wakefield and been doing well at the bottom of the table. And I always think that it's easier to play well in good sides than it is to play well in bad sides around towards the bottom. And I probably didn't get my timing right. That's happened a couple of times in my career. But one of those was, I'd been playing, and again, I'd been playing well, and Glenn Morrison and Paul King, who were at Wakefield at the time, were in my ear saying, "How comes you're not getting a run in this Leeds team? Like they're not playing very well at the moment, and maybe you should go and ask him." So I thought, and what it is with Brian Mack, or what I've come to learn and from speaking to other people, is if he either respects you, you're in. If he doesn't, as a player, then you've got no chance, basically. And that's it. His military mindset, and he's very, very successful in what he did. So, is it the right way of coaching? I don't know. It's obviously done him successful, but I was in the camp of Ryan here, and went and asked him, what do I need to? I think I asked him something along the lines of, what do I need to do to be playing in this side, or have you managed to look at video? Well, obviously they'd just lost a number of games in a row, and he basically, what he must have translated in his head was, should we have a fight in the car park? because he lost his shit. He lost his shit, and he kind of walked through me really in terms of, who do you think you should be playing in front of? Named all these players, your Ryan Bailey's, Luke Burgess's, Jamie Peacock, and just completely got the wrong end of the stick. And I think about 3 weeks later, that's when he came to me and said that, we want to send you on loan to Barrow. And I was like, nah, mate. I says, I've not given up. My wife leaving her job and me moving my daughter down to go back and play in the Championship. I've came to play Super League, and that's where I eventually went on to sign for Wakefield, and it was the best decision I ever made, really.
Yeah. How did that pan out for you then after that car park confrontation?
Well, a bit like Kyle, he pretty much said to me, "You're not welcome here." Weirdly, I knew we had a small squad, regardless. So he said, "Listen, no matter what, you never play for me." I was like, well, listen, I'll just keep coming up and training hard and hopefully force my way in. And that was probably me being genuine as well. Just being a professional is what we do, and believed I could change his mind. But quickly got the information that it weren't going to change his mind. And every day was a battle. So every day be like, "You're going to Workington." I'm like, "Mate, I'm not," because a bit similar. I want to play Super League. I'm trying to get this club. You're going to Featherstone? I'm not. You're going to London Scholars? So then I'd have meetings with Brian Noble every day. Would be, you're going to London Scholars? I'm like, I'm not. Like, so then weirdly, Castleford came in for me on loan, which was in the Super League at the time. I was like, yeah, great, no problem. I'll go. Okay. You're not going there.
So why did they want to not allow you to go to Super League?
It becomes an ego battle, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's an alpha male environment.
It was like, it'll make us look stupid.
Because in their heads they think you're a Championship player.
Yeah, and just wanted to degrade me as much as they can. And
it's quite sinister, really.
Weirdly, honestly, I remember after we played a game against Featherstone, I wasn't playing, and we had to fly to Canada the next day. So I'm literally got back home, packing my suitcase, and I get a big email saying, "Aaron, just so you know, you are not flying to Canada tomorrow." Like, why? Because you've not agreed a loan deal with Workington. I was like, I didn't even know about this deal even being a thing. Like, it wasn't even a thing. So they didn't let me fly with the team to Canada.
At this stage, they've properly isolated you.
Oh,
You're training on your own in Rochdale.
Yeah, so I had to go and train on my own in Rochdale. So literally walk.
And that's a punishment for anyone.
Just walk up to Rochdale and be on a bike for 20 minutes and go home, and that was it. So every day I had to train on my own until they got back from Canada. And then when they got back, I wasn't allowed to train in the day. I had to train at night when they'd gone home, and it was just me. And it was so difficult because in that time there was a lot of payment issues anyway, and financial trouble. So we wasn't getting paid on time. I was in that Rochdale on my own. I wasn't allowed to train with the team. I wasn't allowed to eat with the team. I was being called to meetings from the club. So
you turned up to have a hamstring scan, and you weren't on the list, so the coach had to pay for it.
I looked to have a scan, and the clinician or the person who does the scan came and said, "We can't scan you because the club haven't paid their insurance bill." One of the players, he was waiting for his operation, and the surgeon went in and said, "The owner's not paid you for the operation." So I remember that was back in the day where Paul Rowley paid on his credit card for his operation. So there was a lot of things that was a mess anyway.
Did you get to the bottom of it though? Was it because you were on pretty big bucks there, right?
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other people, was it just a case that they'd been given the direction that had to be taken out because of you were earning 10 times more than others, or what? Or get you off the wage bill?
Yeah, I think it was a salary cap thing. I think there was a wage bill thing.
There's another way to go about that, though, isn't there?
Well, that's the darker side of the game. We've all been around players where, you know, I can think a number of players who have had the similar. They almost want to isolate and degrade that part, because the idea is he walks away from 2 years' wages.
So it was this big sort of McDermott military game, essentially.
He must have decided.
It was sort of like water torture.
Yeah, well, they brought obviously Joe Mellor in as well, so he was the starting half with Josh McCrone. And I remember a game was getting beat by Wilco actually played it, was getting beat by Dewsbury, and I was 18th man, and Bodine Thompson pulled out in the warm up, and he comes up to me, Mark, and says, "You're in." Nice one. And I remember Bob Bezic come up to me which was, I'll never forget it. It was brilliant. It's something so little, but he comes up to me in the change rooms at Dewsbury and just says, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." He went, "Are you all right?" I went, "Yeah." And it was something because I'd not been asked, "Are you all right?" for months, and I was like, it just actually straightened me out a little bit. And I was on the bench and was losing with probably 10 minutes to go, and it was a absolute mud fest. The pitch was horrendous, and we had white shirts, so both teams covered in pitch black mud, and I've come on gleaming white shirt. Oh my God, the most embarrassing thing ever. And I actually scored the winning try to win the game against Dewsbury, which we should have won easily, really.
Yeah.
And after the game, he says nothing to me. We have to fly to Toulouse to play in Toulouse the week after, and he pulls me in the team run and says, "Just so you know, I'd love to play you, but I just can't." I'm just going, right. He went, "I'd love to give you a game, just can't," and walked off.
The plot thickens.
So just so bizarre. And then again, I come back. So I'm thinking, well, I must be pretty close. I'm close, even though it's weird. I'm close. We get back to England. Next time they go to Canada, Ryan, you're not travelling with the team. Train on your own. It was just a mental torture. And you know what the worst thing was, is I used to get home from training and just sleep because I wanted the next day to be quicker. So then this pain would stop of just not knowing the confusion, what I'd done wrong. I didn't have a clue why he was treating me like that, or why the club was treating me like that. They'd call me for meetings. I'd get called to a meeting at Cedar Court, the hotel at Huddersfield.
Yeah.
So I'd have to drive there, and the CEO wouldn't be there. I'm like, "Wait, oh no, we've cancelled it. We'll move it to tomorrow." And I'd be back and forth, and my mum and my dad. I used to go back at home in tears and thinking I just didn't understand what I'd done wrong. And the worst thing was seeing my mum in tears, thinking, why? Because bear in mind, all what my mum knew was I wasn't being paid on time, so I was letting off my dad every month. I was being called to meetings, being treated like that, not being played, being told I'll never play again. And my mum, and as parents, they don't know, do they? They don't know the full story around how rugby league works. We're probably a little bit battle hardened to it now as we get older, and you understand it. Like what Carl said, you do get exposed to players who are not wanted and forced out, and you go through it a bit yourself. But seeing your family in tears about just their son just being, and again, I'm not a bad person. I don't drink, don't smoke. I'm not a disruptor. To see my mum go through that was the worst part of it by far, and obviously my wife and kids. My little girl, who would have been 3, 4 at the time. Just why are you not playing anymore, Daddy? And how do you explain that full situation to your 4-year-old girl? And that was the hardest thing for me, to explain that, because I'd not done anything wrong. We talk about role models and teaching your kids right from wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong and was being treated that bad, and was probably the worst. But again, when I said about being the best time in my career, that was the worst time, not just in my career, but my life for sure.
Kyle, what's your reaction to that? Because obviously there's always two sides to another story. Like Brian and both Brians aren't here to give their version of it, but that is like, when you hear that there seems an injustice there.
Yeah, there does, but I've no doubt that, football's probably the same. There's ruthless parts when you're not wanted there, and they're paying you a wage, and, it is it sounds ruthless, but it is the nature of the beast. You know what I mean? And that's why I always think that players should understand that at certain points in their career they're going to be overpaid, and at certain points they're going to be underpaid. You know, but the game takes a pound of flesh off you. It's not just a one-way transaction. Do you know what I mean? So I just think that you have to almost at times put your big boy pants on almost and just, you know, whilst it's very, very difficult, I get that. I've no doubt you've come out of it the other end a lot stronger and learnt a lot of lessons about, you know, just about darker sides of life, really, I suppose. But I don't think it's right. But I understand that in a professional environment where, you know, success and the outcomes of seasons and games ultimately keeps a lot of people in a lot of jobs, that if you're not wanted and they seem that you're part of, for whatever reason, could they be more classier and go about it better? Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? But I honestly think that that's perhaps a reason why clubs like Toronto and clubs like, you know, other clubs, let's say, that don't have that solid foundation of correct businessmen from top to bottom, why they predominantly find themselves where they are, you know, because... Did
you ever see that, though, at Saints, someone isolated to the point where they tried to drive them out of the club? And
not really, no, not really. You know, there was ways and means that I've seen players leave the club, again, but there's always two sides to that story as well. You know, I think players that have... It all depends as well, because what they try and do is ultimately the club that they want to protect the club, and they want to protect everyone in their organisation. And if that means that they have to find a way of moving you on, they're never going to really do it. No one comes out of it. It's very rare, that players come out of it as the winner, is it? You know, you're talking about getting a player to move clubs. Now, whether that's, you know, yes, they may get paid out, but they've got to go through, that's just not a process that happens one week. That process builds for a number of weeks, and then they take it home to the families, and then, you know, obviously then when they do move on, they've got to move the families with them, so it's always an ugly side of it. But I think we'd be fools to think that it doesn't happen. And, you know, we talk about, you know, the sort of the mental side of the game now and looking after people. Yes, I think there's a lot more things in place for players to be looked after, but I still don't think that on the, you know, at the coalface of it, then the protection's really there, is it? It's a mentally draining sport, Will. It really is, and it challenges you. And I think sometimes the best, some quality players who are far more talented than I've seen, or far more talented than myself, haven't been able to handle that. Do you know what I mean? So there almost is, the higher up you go, yes, you have to have a certain fitness level, a certain skill set, behave in a certain way, but you also have to be mentally a bit tough. And I understand if people say, well, that's not right, we shouldn't be, but for me, in sport, it is. You know, if you're not mentally able to cope and handle situations, then the game will eat you alive.
But then you also need people to back your corner, right? That middleman or that middlewoman. And this is where this chapter takes an interesting diversion to, I mean, actually a positive one for you, Ryan, because your business now as an agent, predominantly at the moment in women's football, is because of your experience at Toronto, right? So, I mean, let me ask both of you this, like representation in rugby league in terms of, you know, agents, managers. Where is it at? What is the standard of that? Does it exist? Where would you say, Kyle, from, you know, having someone represent your corner? Yeah,
well, I had Andy Clark who looked after me right from day one, really, up at Whitehaven. Drove up to, he actually got banned from driving coming up to my house. He got a couple of his last final speeding points, so he always holds that against me, as if it was my fault. But anyhow, he came up and look, again, I think you've got to understand that, you know, your agent's there to, I know this sounds a bit sort of cynical what I'm saying, but your agent's there to do a job for you. He's not there to be your best mate as such. I had a great relationship with Andy because I stayed with him an awful long time. And even towards the end there, when my deals weren't really worth having an agent for, he actually just said he'd still help me out, but he didn't expect me to pay him. Do you know what I mean? So,
but he would have interfered in a situation like that, right? Is my point.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. He would have interfered in that, and he'd have gave you advice, and he'd have gave you. But as well though, and I'm not saying this about Andy, but I imagine I imagine that agents are all, you know, it's sport, it's ruthless, and they are looking to move players on. And if they do that one club a favour, will it come back round in their time? And you know, I think you'd be a fool not to think that everyone in the game is trying to protect number one.
Yeah.
You know, but again, every deal I signed that he got me, I was always happy. You know, they don't ever force you to put pen to paper. They just lay the cards in front of you. If something's happening behind the scenes, we start going down the road of paranoia then, don't you? Then you've got to, if your agent wasn't doing anything for you, then I think that'd be a different thing. But I never felt that you could get angry at people that wanted to pay you money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never felt that was, you know, you'd be more angry when people didn't want to pay you money.
How did this then drive you into the world of sports agency? Because at the time you were 27, 28, you're in your sort of prime as a rugby league player, right? Still so many years ahead of you. And so much more to concentrate on in your playing career, but then you've got this whole new world.
Yeah, I think obviously I was doing my master's degree in sports business management whilst I was at Toronto, in them obviously 26, 27 years of age there, and I never really knew what I wanted to kind of do with it. Kind of be like a sporting director or some sort of role, and I never really considered the agent type role. But I just kind of thought, with the experience I was going through and the hardship I was kind of experiencing, that I never wanted one of my players to go through a day of what I went through, because my issues probably lasted about 18 months or 2 years. So it wasn't a week, it was a good period of time. And just to reference Kyle's point in that he probably didn't want his agent to be his best mate, just wanted him to get the job done. I was probably the opposite at that time. I wanted someone just to be there, and that's what I wanted from my agent, and what I believed I needed, and what probably my model as an agent now. So when I kind of went through that issue of Toronto, I was learning about different things about sport and salary cap and how it kind of works, and speaking to lawyers, speaking to solicitors, speaking to the governing body, and really finding an education out of it. Whilst I was doing my degree, so I passed my master's degree, and there was a coffee shop in Astley what an ex-player, Corey Patterson, owned, and a lot of the Man City football, because when I talked about agency, I never thought for 1 minute it'd be women's football, because at the time obviously it wasn't big, and I didn't know enough about it, and naturally I was thinking, well, rugby league, that'd be a be all and end all. So a lot of the Man City footballers, Steph Orton, Alex Greenwood, George Stanley, they all went to a coffee shop in Astley, because they all live around the area, and it was a coffee shop what I went to quite frequently to see Corey Patterson, who was an ex-teammate. Just coffee chat, just chatting to him, also become mates with a lot of the girls there for a couple of months there. And they mentioned a girl called Jess Park, who had just left her agent, because that agent had gone to work with James Milner. And in football, if you leave an agency to go and work with another agency, you can't take your players for 2 years. So I was chatting away, and I remember Steph Orton, she was saying, why don't you look after Jess? And I was like, just brushed it off, like didn't think anything of it. But obviously she knew the situation I'd been through at Toronto, and the experiences I'd had. And I said, well, that's probably one benefit I do have, is that I'm involved in sport, and I can see what happens to players daily, and see how they need to be protected. So she said, well, why don't you speak to her? Because I believe you could look after her, which was a massive compliment from Steph and the girls, that I could actually do it. Because again, I was only been 27, 28 at the time. I remember speaking to Jess, and nervous wreck, like speaking to a women's footballer. I didn't even know anything about the game, didn't even know what position she played. And rang her and said, can I speak to your parents on the back of it? So I spoke to the parents about what I could offer, because I just thought, I remember speaking to my wife, and she said, if you don't try and don't take the opportunity now, you might regret it. You never know where she's going to end up in her career. So I just dove straight in, and then the day after, I was a nervous wreck, thinking, have I said anything right? Have I said anything wrong? Like legally, have I said the right things? And Jess ran me straight back and said, yeah, I want you to look after me. And just panicked. I had to get my license quickly because I didn't even have a license to be an agent. So I had to pass that, do all that kind of stuff. And met her a couple of days later to sign the contract and all that kind of stuff. And regardless of her footballing ability, because it's easy to say now because she's playing for England and Manchester City, so the biggest club in the world, and playing for England, which is great. But as a person, I couldn't have signed a better person for me. I think she reminds me of me, and I see a lot of myself in her as a young player, and to be able to, and for her to trust me with her career and is a massive compliment and something what I'll never really understand, and the fact she trusts me with it. But I was really lucky in the fact that I managed to sign Jess because of how much of a superstar she is, has helped me sign other players. It's kind of how it works. So like it's a bit of a snowball effect. So we've got 20 players now, but it's probably all been a snowball effect of Jess and luck. I've fluked it, winged it. A lot of that was luck and judgment, and I've just winged every second of it. But by learning and being honest and transparent, and probably to go against what Kyle said, is that I probably do believe Jess is my best mate. I believe we're that close. The amount of agents who try and steal her off me every single day, I'm like, it's just so protective over her. But I believe that I'm the agent, what I would want, if that makes sense. And that's not without blowing my own trumpet, but I feel like my experiences of going through stuff, and again, it's easy for Jess because every club wants Jess, every brand wants Jess, which is great for me to manipulate numbers. And am I the agent to get her a couple more quid? Probably not. But am I the agent who cares the most and tries the hardest? I'd probably back myself, yeah. That's probably my model of agency, really.
Do you know what's interesting in all that? When you said there that you just took that chance and thought I'll ring it, it always reminded me about your DVD, taking that chance. So it's almost like, that you've deep down, for a guy that you said is perhaps insecure and perhaps doesn't back himself, you've got some balls, mate, because you've just done two things there that most people would go, no, I'm not going to bother doing that. That's not, sending the DVD in. I don't think there'd be too many people who'd have done that, but you took a chance, and then you've took a chance again, and it's came up trump. So I think your lesson in all of this is perhaps just to maybe back yourself a bit more, right?
And my thing came from probably a bit of the worst part of my career and my life, in using that to my advantage, going, listen, Jess, I've seen it all. I've been through. It's all right for you, Jess. You're at the top of your game, and it's all right. That's the easy. Being an agent is the easiest job in the world for George Williams, where every club in the world wants him. He's one of the best players in the world. But being an agent for someone who's not so talented, I think that's a harder job. Being an agent for someone who's struggling, and again, for me, I just thought, with what I'd been through, I didn't want to let any player of mine go through a day of what I went through, because I think it's always I'll put this the right way, it's always a challenge to go through adversity in any career, but to experience it yourself and to flip it on its head, to turn it into a positive for someone else. And I talked about being selfish in my early careers. I feel like that has put me in good stead to be really unselfish and help a young girl out in her career. And weirdly now, to see her make a debut for England, and to have that weird, as a parent type of, cause I've never had that, to watch one of my players who I'm involved with. So obviously my mum and dad always watch me, but to sit in a stand and watch women's football, to cheer a young girl on and for a debut, was one of the best moments in my life. To watch them fulfil a dream and playing for England, to sit with their parents, to watch their kid play for England. It was the best experience of my life, and it's given me way more highs than rugby league has ever given me, because in rugby league you're in control, aren't you? Because it's your career. When you're not in control, it's a bit like a coach, isn't it? Like the coaches always say that it's hard because they're not in control. Whereas that element there for me, to feel like I've had a positive influence in her career, because listen, Jess is she's a character. The amount of trouble she's been in, I've had to get her out of it, which has been great. It's hilarious thinking back now, but because she's just a kid from Hull who's, again, would play in the car park if she could, to the amount of trouble I've kind of had to get her out of, and
hopefully not car park with Brian.
They're not them. That's what I'm saying. So it's really interesting. She's just a young kid just living her dream as a professional footballer, and to harness that, and to now to walk into a room with a brand who want to give a £250,000, £500,000 to wear football boots, and for her to trust me with that conversation is one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had. Like
the obvious thing I want to ask is, because I can see so much you light up and you're sort of living your dreams now through, you know, the guys and girls that you're representing. Are you still living your dreams through your career on the pitch? Because you're only 31, and have Salford seen this as a distraction for you for what you're doing, what they're paying you to do?
I remember we had an RL Cares chat a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about that life after rugby league and transition and all that kind of stuff. And I think Kyle has done it unbelievably well, transitioning from playing to what he's doing now. And I don't think there's any luck with that. I think it's hard work, effort. It's been about what we've gone through before. So we can't making it here to get here to do the podcast. I think it's no luck by them people getting them situations. And what the guy was saying from the ROK, he was talking about, if you actually have other interests and other hobbies, your performances actually improve, because it's not all about rugby league. And coincidentally, the last 3 years have probably been the best of my career.
Because you were happier off the pitch.
And I've had the agency 3 years. And it's just because I've probably learned that rugby league is not the be all and end all. And weirdly, I could have a shocker of a game on a weekend in front of the Sky cameras, and it'd be awful. I'd go home, I'd be devastated, depressed, and going through all the feelings you do. And I'd ring Jess the day after about her career and what game she's got tomorrow. She might be playing at Wembley in a cup final, and she don't have a clue about my game. It's so much bigger in your head, isn't it? Like, and she wouldn't have a clue, and it just grounds me so much that, oh well, no one's actually cares anyway.
I think one of the other podcasts that we've done was with Tim Laffey, and he said one of the best things that I've heard. You know, when he speaks about his family and how his kids don't care, and really, you know, he talked about how he left and went on the building site, and when he was working with those guys, he realised that rugby league wasn't anything big for him. Do you know what I mean? Because none of these other guys knew anything around it. But to echo what Ryan said, when you're in it, you're so immersed yourself in it because it's providing your mortgage, it's supporting your family, it's your passion, it's your dream. You know, for many of the players, their whole identity has been brought up right from when they were 4-year-old by, you know, he scored 2 tries this weekend, let's give him a couple of quid, right the way up to, so his whole self-worth comes from the game. And I think when you start to threaten that, or when it gets threatened, that can become very, very difficult for players to deal with. So I always feel that, you know, the guys that, like what you've just said there, that have interests away from it. You spoke about, you know, staying awake at night, and I was that player for a number of years. But as I got to around about 30 and I started exploring and doing different things, I found myself just getting home and just going to bed because it was just a job. Do you know what I mean? And when you say it's just a job, it wasn't, because, you know, you loved everything about it. But it becomes more and more like a job. I think the moment you sign a professional contract, you almost sign away the little kid and the right to why you play the game. It becomes it has to become a different mindset for me. I might be wrong.
I think you nailed it with in terms of the identity, because it's been a bit of a reality check when I'm going to meetings with the girls now. It's Ryan the agent, not Ryan the rugby player, and it's probably going to help me in the long run, that because when you finish playing rugby, you're not Ryan the rugby player anymore. You're just Ryan, and that's, I think Kyle nailed it. That players struggle with that the identity shift of not knowing what you are, because I'll go into a room with a player. I don't even the conversation the one with Nike, Puma, Adidas, New Balance. And you walk in there, and massive brands, companies, organisations, and it's, "Hi Ryan, nice to meet you. Oh yeah, Ryan, this is Ryan, Jesse's agent." It's like, no, I actually play rugby as well. But it's such a shift because I've never had that. I've never had that identity of, and you can, not like you get jealous, but I'm like, I still play as well. I am professional, but
that's kind of one of my points as well. Is that, and I wanted to sort of get to the bottom as we just wrap it up. Is that fire still in your belly on the pitch? Because at 31, you know, you still do have some time ahead of you. And I remember having this conversation with Wilco and Flash, not that they listened to a single word that I said, but it was when they were coming towards the end of their careers, really decent, respectable careers and grand final winning careers. Like I'm saying, from someone who's never played professional sport from the outside, like soak up every single second of it, because you've got plenty of time afterwards. Like you've got 40 years ahead of you as an agent if you want it, right? And to soak up those moments that you can't get back, and those moments. I mean, I've interviewed you, Kyle, on the pitch at Old Trafford, with your hands on the trophy, like those moments that could still be there for you, and you've joined your boyhood club in that sense, and you're still living your dream.
Weirdly, the desire and the hunger has got far greater since having the agency, because you hold a responsibility that, as much as I want to be a great agent, and that's great, but I'm also a role model to them players as a player as well. So because they all know what I do, and they'll text me saying good luck for a game or whatever it may be, and for me the desire of winning a trophy has been is the greatest it's ever been for me. Like I am that desperate to win a trophy, almost that, and Cal probably laugh, but I almost feel like my career as a player will be a failure if I don't win a trophy. I want to win a trophy that bad, and it's one of them where you think, when you win one, you'll be fine, but you get that addictive instinct that you want to win more and more, which is, again, I wouldn't know because I've not won one, but the desperation for me and the boys at Salford, I've never felt this feeling before, where every game hurts me if we lose, because I know it stops me winning a trophy. And I don't know whether that's come from having the agency and wanting them to be proud of me. I think first and foremost, I want to be proud for myself and my family and my kids. But I think from being an agent and seeing, because obviously my players have all won stuff, like they've all going out winning stuff and trophies and league cups, and I'm going, weirdly, after we played against Hull KR a couple of weeks ago, away. It was a quarter final of a Challenge Cup, and we got beat, and it rattled me that for a couple of weeks, really rattled me, and I always made a promise to myself that I'll never go into Wembley changing rooms and Old Trafford changing rooms until I get there. So you get off, I have to go on stadium tours, don't you, things like that. And I had to do an event with Jess a couple of weeks ago at Wembley. So I had to go with, and we had to go underneath, and she said, we had to do like a couple of photo shoots in the Wembley changing rooms, and I couldn't go in because I was that devastated that I hadn't got there myself. I'm not doing it until I earn the right to be there. And Jess has played at Wembley 10, 15 times now. It's the novelty for her, because she plays for England. They play every time they play a game, they play there. And I'd say, Jess, please do not underestimate playing at Wembley, because I'm 31 and I'm desperate to be there. And that's why the Hull KR game, when we got beat in the Challenge Cup, rattled me for a couple of weeks. And weirdly, it might be this anticlimax of when you actually get to the stadium, or might be this Super League thing what I built up a few years back. So I'm always scared as well of actually getting there. But the desperation for me to get there is, for me at the moment, would be the difference between calling my career, and it sounds so stupid and childish, but calling my career a success or a failure. And I think I need to win something.
I actually felt, the Challenge Cup final was the one that was missing for me. We got there in 2019 and Warrington turned us over. We were red hot favourites. We went into it 14 games in a row. Morgan Knowles gets that try disallowed early on, and I think if that try gets given, it perhaps changes the course of the game. It doesn't, however. And Warrington, with a very much patched up team, they go ahead and beat us. And that defeat that rattled me big time, because I thought in my head that if I don't get my hands on that cup, then my career was a failure.
It's crazy.
Do you know what I mean? And so when we got to do it in 2021, well, for me that was just it was almost if it was all over then it was all over. Do you know what I mean? I could have easily just went, that I completed the game. Like, that's how I felt in my own head. So I understand what you're saying. I get it. I really do. But I think for Salford and the journey that they're on, I think that almost gives them a bit more hope. I think it gives them a bit more desire, a bit more expectation, because since 2019, they've started now to change the mindset of how people look at Salford as a club, and it's largely through guys like like Ryan, Brodie Croft, Sneed, Callum Watkins. Incredible players that have brought perhaps something that Salford club hasn't seen for a long, long time. So I think that, and I think I've said this to you before, I think Salford's biggest chance probably was at the end of last season when they took on Huddersfield and got beat. Was it the year before that? I think it was. You obviously had that semi-final against Saints and on another day could have knocked Saints off and got to a grand final, but it has dropped a little bit this season. But that performance and those players, they're still very capable of, if they get in that six with people, again, like Ryan, and the belief that they have within them, and crucially, that bit between the teeth that they're so desperate to get there, I wouldn't write them off. I certainly wouldn't write them off.
Yeah.
But, it's at clubs like Salford, you only get a limited time, I believe, to capture something. Largely because the big four names that have sat on that grand final trophy have done it for a reason. It's because there are academies underneath them and the player pool they get to pick from. They almost, in many ways, have a bit of a cheat on the competition because they attract all the best kids first, and everybody else gets sort of fizzled out across the rest of the teams. But look, mate, I just wish you all the very best for the rest of the season.
And you've had that, obviously, because you've probably seen some people at Lee, not just on the pitch as teammates, because you had a second spell there, but behind the scenes and what they did and getting their hands on a trophy and having their Hollywood ending. So just to finish, Ryan, what does the next 5 years look like for you in terms of the agency and then wrapping up your career and in terms of the perfect ending, the perfect swan song? Yeah,
definitely. And listen, in regards to the agency, there's a little bit in there that also when I finish playing, I'll have a job to walk into, which is with what I want to do. And I just feel like I always thought, as soon as I finish playing, what next? And there's only limited jobs in rugby league for people when they leave the game. So I've tried to do as much as I can within the game to try and cement yourself a good reputation and a trustworthy reputation that you'll get used for things like this and putting yourself out there. And as well, like what Kyle said before, we love talking about the game. Like as much as it's a job and the punditry commentary is a job, we just love talking about the game, don't we? So I've always kind of loved that element, and I love the tactical element of it. As a head coach, probably not. I think assistant would look okay at this moment in time. The agency at the side to just know that I know I've got something, and as well in regards to the agency, that become a better agent in terms of not by recruiting more players but recruiting the right players is more importantly than anything.
But never in rugby league, right? You're not interested?
No, I said before, weirdly it's something that I never wanted. I didn't know anything about women's football. All I knew was rugby league. I don't think I'd ever touch rugby league in terms of being an agent. I just think it's too close to home. I know too many bad stories and bad people. And because it's funny that a lot of my teammates will ask me for advice and going through contract situations, but it's just not something that I'm willing to entertain in terms of rugby league. I'd rather, as well, in regards to the women's football, with how that's flying at the moment, and the education I've had through it, I think it's probably best I stay in that space at the moment. In regards to playing, I'm still going to stick with, I feel like it's a failure if I don't win a trophy. I really want to stick by that. And you know what? At the end of my career, I might not have a trophy to show for it. But I don't want to die wondering, I suppose. So that's the ultimate goal for me. I want to win a trophy. Obviously, I've got 3 or 4 years left at Salford now to make that happen. And for me, that's the ultimate goal. That's the first. If you said to me, what do you want to achieve? What would be number one in your list? That it'll be win a trophy. And I think the coaching staff, obviously Paul Rull, I think we all share that same value and same goal. Again, I'm not under no illusions how tough that is going to be to win a trophy, but I just feel like I'm running out of time, if that makes sense, weirdly, because I've got a lot of rugby ahead of me, but I feel like I'm running out of time. I want to win a trophy. I'm desperate to win a trophy, and that, for Salford as well, I think that's the main thing in doing something for a club what doesn't naturally put himself in the top 4 category. To win a trophy for them would be pretty special, and then I can leave and go into Kyle's role alongside him and have the agency there to be a good role model for most importantly good people rather than good players. I think how talented my players are in the agency is irrelevant. I just think I feel I've got 20, 22 of my best friends under me for me to protect them, and that means that's more important than having good players.
Right, love it. Thanks so much for coming in, mate. Really interesting conversation. And again, when I said an hour and 20 minutes ago, where's this going to go? We had kind of no idea, and some really sort of topical points in there. So fascinating, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and I think that the moral of the story is if you see Brian McDermott in a car park, fucking run for your life.
Send him a DVD.
Send him a DVD. Brilliant. Kyle, top man. Brian, thank you very much. And let's see, while Mark Flanagan's not here, we've lost John Wilkin for good now, but if Mark Flanagan is not here for a couple more weeks, if we can go from 4.9 stars up to 5. Because I think you've helped us do that. We've gone slightly higher brow since Flanagan has gone on holiday. Right, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.